Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and you might be wondering, who is Nicholeen Peck? Why should I care about her at all? Well, I would like to introduce myself to you in this video and share some of my backstory and why I am who I am. Who is Nicholeen Peck? Well, the short answer is I'm the mother of four. I am a previous foster parent. I'm an author, and I speak all over the world about self-government. But I'd like to give you a little bit of a longer story, more of an understanding of who I am, where I've come from, and why some of the lessons that I teach are so valuable to me and others. So the name Nicholeen is pretty unique. In fact, last time I checked, I think there were only 14 Nicholeens who spelled their name like me in the entire world. My parents were very grateful for my birth. In fact, every year on my birthday, my mother reminds me about what a miracle I was, is what she says. She's like, Nicholeen, when you were born, the placenta could fit in my hand, and your umbilical cord, when they tried to cut it, broke in pieces on the floor. You were supposed to be dead. Everyone thought you would be dead, and you weren't. You were fine and totally healthy. She's like, Nicholeen, you were such a blessing and such a miracle to us. So my parents ended up giving me both of their names. Now, I shouldn't say that I'm their favorite child, but I like to jokingly suggest that because I'm both of their namesakes. My father's name is Nicholas and my mother's name is Janine, and they hooked those names together to create Nicholeen. And I, for one, am actually pretty happy that I've had a unique name my entire life. It helps people remember me or not remember me. But either way, it's something that I have that's individual just to me. I came from a family of 7. So there were 5 children, 2 parents. My dad was a school teacher. My mother was a homemaker. She stayed home and she took care of things with the family, but she was always trying to bring in extra income as well, because if you know, school teachers do not make that much money. My dad taught high school, he taught college, he wrote curriculum, really smart guy. He was also an actor and a play director, and that was something that he did on the side. And he put me on a stage from the time that I was very little, being in plays like Fiddler on the Roof, West Side Story, The King and I, South Pacific, and many other things that he was working on, projects that he was part of. And so from a young age, I recognized that it was important to know who I was and to have something to say. In fact, I remember sitting backstage with Dad before plays and having him go through a visualization with all of the actors, because he was directing this program, and he would have them get into character. And I remember thinking that it was amazing that I could transport myself to this place where I was actually a different character, where I thought of myself in a different way. Now, this was a huge lesson that I learned in my life, because I learned I could plan to be who I wanted to be. I could plan to be a bad guy. I could plan to be a good guy. And I started using this in my life to promote self-regulation in all the things that I did. I decided that if I was having a bad day, I would just change my mind about it. I would just start having a good day. And then I met some key people in my life that made a difference for me forever. So when I was 14 years old, I met some people who literally transformed my life. One of those people was my vice principal at my junior high. One day we were walking down the hall and I passed this vice principal. His name was Mr. Naylor. And he said, "Hi, Nicholeen, how are you?" And I said, "Pretty good. How are you, Mr. Naylor?" And he said, "I'm happy, thank you." This totally shocked me. Who says I'm happy, thank you? So I couldn't get the thought out of my mind. So at lunch, I went to Mr. Naylor's office, I knocked on the door, and I said, "Mr. Naylor, can I talk to you about something?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, before, when we passed each other in the hall, you said, "How are you doing, Nicholeen?" And I said, "Pretty good, thank you," because that's what people say. But when I asked you how you were doing, you said, "I'm happy, thank you." Why would you say that? And he said, "Well, because I was happy." And I said, "Yeah, but not every time can you always be happy. I mean, sometimes it might be a bad day or something like that." And then he looked at me and he said, and this was a World War II vet, super wise man, and he said, "Why would I choose to be any other way. Whoa, that blew my mind. Yeah, why would I choose to be any other way? So I've got dad, who I'm acting in plays with, who says, you've got to have a voice, you got to know what to say. He communicates with us, has open dialogue with us on a regular basis in our home, okay? I've got mom who shows me family's the most important and doing all of this stuff with family and God and stuff. This is what leads to happiness. And then I've got this World War II vet who is raising me, who's teaching me, why would I choose not to be happy? And so I said, yeah, but what if you're not happy? And he said, well, every time I say I'm happy, thank you, I remind myself that I have a choice. That changed my life. But then still at 14, I knew I was not choosing to be happy all the time. I was definitely not choosing to be happy with my parents. My parents and I did not get along. And this is because my parents were not going to bend on their parental authority like many people were at the time of my growing up years. So modern progressive parenting was becoming very popular, this type of parenting that was brought on by Dr. Benjamin Spock, which was to be the child's friend instead of their parent. Well, my parents were not going to have that. They saw that there was not a principle behind that friends could not tell each other what they needed to do and not do. They couldn't teach each other with the same authority that a parent could. They didn't have the same leadership influence that a parent would have with a child. They knew that this would actually undermine what was happening strength-wise in a family if you brought in that mindset. So they decided to maintain their parental authority, but occasionally trended toward being a little bit more aggressive or authoritarian in their parenting because they didn't have all the skills that I have since been able to find that have changed my parenting forever. Because of that, my parents would sometimes say, I'm the boss, that's why you have to listen to me. Or they would get a little emotional or upset and we would have a few altercations. Well, because I was really strong-willed, which I definitely am, I actually was having a hard time getting along with them in that year when I was like 14 years old. I remember a time when I hit my own mother and when my father hit me because I did that. This is not something I'm proud of. It's something that shows you how strong-willed and oppositional I really was. Well, because of these types of interactions, we actually started having problems in our relationship. And then I met a person who changed everything for me. So my friend's mom and I happened to be talking one day about a party that we were planning to have. And I said, oh, I'm not going to be able to go to the party. And she said, you have to go to the party. You helped plan the party. And I said, no, my parents never let me do anything anymore. All we ever do is fight. And this wise woman looked at me and she said, Nicholeen, have you ever thought of just saying okay? And because I'm oppositional defiant, I looked at her and I said, what? That would never work. That's what they want me to say. And she said, no, Nicholeen, trust me. I bet if you go home and every time they tell you to do something or not to do something, say okay and be okay. And I bet you'll start to be able to do more of what you want to do and you'll fix your relationship. Well, I didn't believe her. I thought I will prove her wrong. I said, okay, I'll go home and do that, but you can't call my parents. And she said, oh, I'm not calling your parents. I said, okay, I'll show you. So I went home and I started saying okay and being okay every time my parents told me to do something or not to do something, and my life drastically changed. All of a sudden, my parents became close to me. I remember where there was this one moment when I was cleaning a room after months of not cleaning my room, and my mom standing there and watching me in disbelief. And then all of a sudden, a truth came to my head, and the truth was, I am so powerful. I chose to be happy. I am never going to choose not to be happy again. So you see how all these pieces were coming together? Well, I had a vice, a problem, and I had to fix that next. Now you know just a little bit about me, and I am going to tell you even more, but maybe you might be interested in what I teach. And on this channel, I teach a lot of things about family communications, about unity and love, about emotions, calmness, and learning to master yourself, self-government. So subscribe to this channel now so that you don't miss any of the videos that I come up with every day in order to help promote self-government, freedom, and good family bonding throughout the world. So So you see how my life really was building upon each other. I mean, I really think all of us become kind of a total of all of the people we were surrounded by and the truths that we learned and that we knew. So another truth that I learned during this same period of time when I was about 14 years old was the truth of telling the truth. I had a problem. I was a liar and I knew it. Being an actress from a young age did not help a person conquer their lying addiction. Definitely. In fact, I had a problem. I started lying when I was probably around 6 years old. This is a normal time children might experiment with lying, but then I saw that it served me really well. In fact, I was very rarely ever corrected for lies or confronted for them. So I was convinced that they were working all the time. So I lied to get attention. I lied to get out of work. I lied to point blame at other people. I lied for all kinds of things. I lied in school, even though I didn't need to. I was smart in school. I did well there, but I still would just lie because I didn't want to do the assignments at the time I needed to. I felt I had better things to do, stuff like that. So there was a point when I realized this lying was a problem, and it was a friend who taught me this. So one day I was playing a game. It was an outside game like basketball or something with some friends of mine, and I told a lie. And then they all looked at each other in this really awkward way, like, you know what she just did, right? Yeah, I know. And I knew that they knew at that moment that I was a liar. And they started making excuses for where they needed to go, and they all left to somebody else's house, and they left me standing there on the basketball court myself. The person whose house it was took her ball and she was walking toward the garage. And then this friend turned around and she looked at me and she said, you know, Nicholeen, we all know that you're a liar and we don't believe a thing that you say. You should choose to tell the truth. And she turned and walked away. She helped me that day. She helped me. She described my problem and that they knew what it was and that I should fix it. She corrected me, and it hurt bad because I realized I had no friends. When you're 14 years old and your friends are only being nice to you because their parents say they have to, but they're really bugged by you because you lie all the time, that hurts. I went home and I searched and searched for how to solve this problem. And in my searching for hours in my room, trying to figure this out and repenting and praying and knowing that I had to solve this problem to fix my life, I remember saying the words, I will never lie again. And when I said those words, then I went, how am I going to do that? Every time I open my mouth, I lie. I lie without even knowing I'm going to lie. And so then I made a skill set for myself. The skill set is called controlling the impulse to lie. And I made this process where I would teach myself how to not lie in the minute, that I would recognize I wanted to say something. I would stop myself and question, is this the truth? If it was the truth, I would go forward and say whatever it was, exactly true, exactly right. And if not, if it wasn't the truth that I wanted to say, if it was going to be a lie, then I would literally turn and walk away and I would disengage socially, which was really hard for me because I was a really social person. This taught me that I could conquer myself, that I could control my greatest vice. So then I started working on other vices and controlling them in a similar way, finding the place where I was going to tip into making a bad decision and instead tip the other way. I started governing myself. Years went by and I had some children. I married a wonderful man and I had 2 children and they were little babies. And I decided that even though I was a really successful career woman, that I wanted those precious years at home with my children. So at this time I had a 3 and a 1-year-old. I really wanted to be there with them, but my husband was changing jobs. He was going back to school. We weren't going to have a lot of money. So because I'm a prayerful person, I prayed, what do you do, Nicholeen? What do you do for your family? And the answer that I got was, how about you take in treatment foster children? So we started bringing in youth ages 12 to 18 into our home, and we did treatment foster care for a facility that we called the Youth Village. The Youth Village taught me how to do certain skills, and when I started going to the training, I was blown away. I went, wait a minute, following instructions? Accepting no answers? I taught myself that when I was 14 years old. I taught myself how to do that. Oh, my dad always taught me how to disagree in an appropriate way. And they had this huge book of skills, any skill for any behavior under the sun. And I went, you know what? We don't need to worry about all of those skills. Let's just focus on 4 basic skills. So then I started teaching my foster children and my children primarily primarily 4 basic skills. These are the skills that I'm known for all over the world today. Even though I didn't necessarily make them up, other people found them too. They're just skills that people who are developmentally healthy actually do for themselves. So a short time after taking in foster children, people noticed the change in these treatment kids that were coming to my home. And they would say to me, Nicholeen, what is going on? Tell me what's happening. Can you come talk at my church? Can you talk at our PTA group or our support group? Can you please come and tell us what it is you're doing to help them have such a change of heart? And I said, yes, in order to have a change of heart, you have to learn self-government. That's what it means to have a change of heart. So I started telling people that I would do classes on teaching self-government. However, I thought this would be incredibly short-lived. I was trained that you do things for the world to make the world a better place. Mom taught me that, Dad taught me that, and so I figured that that would be something that I could teach other people too. Well, I realized after a little while of teaching that there was a skill that people absolutely didn't know, that I thought everybody knew, and this skill was how to be calm when somebody else isn't, and how to help them choose calmness without losing your calmness at the same time. This was a skill I had developed for myself, much like I developed my skill not to lie during the time I was doing this treatment foster care. And people started begging for me to teach them this skill. After a little while, the BBC contacted our family and asked us to be on a program called The World's Strictest Parents. This aired in 2009, and when that program aired, our family became kind of a sensation. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. We were doing it to spread a little bit of goodness to the world, but because the two 17-year-olds that the BBC brought to our house for this program actually maintained calmness after a couple of days of tantrums, and because they were crying and begging not to leave our house at the end of the program, then people were like, how did you do it? Where's your book? Come talk to us. What's going on? So the Peck family now has a mission that started as just a way to make the world a better place, but now a way to help families become free from emotional bondage, to use their emotions to connect and to bond instead of to be divisive and controlling and to damage their relationships, which can happen. And so we teach skills of self-government and how to improve family unity and communication. So I wrote a book. In fact, that first book took quite a while to write, but after that, many more books came. In fact, there's another video on this channel that goes into the different books that I've written. I've written 11 of my own. I've also written multiple versions of them, and they've been translated into different languages, and you can hear more about those on different videos. I've also done books where I've collaborated with other authors to try to strengthen families and stuff like that as well. So that happened, and then there was this organization called the Worldwide Organization for Women that consults at the United Nations, and they asked me if I would come speak at the United Nations. I said, sure, happy to do that. So I went and spoke at the United Nations, and the organization ended up asking me to become their new president of their organization. So then I put on that hat as well. I was the CEO and founder of Teaching Self-Government. I was running also the Worldwide Organization for Women, which is a nonprofit dedicated to strengthening families, to preserving religious liberties and sovereignty around the world. And this organization all of a sudden brought me into new places. So I was already on news programs and writing for different media outlets and online platforms, but now all of a sudden people were putting me in rooms with religious leaders, and religious leaders were consulting with me for how to train their people, how to teach them to preserve and strengthen their families in these difficult times. So our family has traveled all over the world. Now, there's one thing about my story that I haven't mentioned yet, and some people consider this a pretty big thing, and that is that I homeschooled my children. My children. I couldn't homeschool the foster children that came to my house, but all 4 of my children were homeschooled from start to finish, and it's a good thing they were, because in our family, we had to travel all over the world to teach people about creating strong families. So many people look to me for advice on homeschooling. There are multiple multiple videos on this channel that do relate to homeschooling because people like that information from me as well. And I'm a speaker at some of the largest homeschool conferences around the world. I am the type of person that is just living their regular life. I put the majority of my effort and emphasis on my family, my children. I love gardening, cooking, canning, sewing. Those are things that I learned to love from my mom. They mean real life to me. And those are things that I do on a regular basis. In my spare time, I try to give of myself in any way I can. And it seems to be that people have thrown opportunities at me faster than I can even take those opportunities on. So that's what's happened to Nicholeen Peck. Now I have a podcast and this YouTube channel, as well as a website, teachingselfgovernment.com, as well as many other places that people end up finding out about me and who I am. But what I teach isn't really about me. It's about you. That's the important thing. I'm going to probably get a little emotional. Sorry, but this is my purpose. It's my mission, or if you want to call it my ministry, to use religious terms. This is the way that our family, the Peck family, and especially me, have realized that we fit into the world during this time. We are hoping with everything that I do, every bill that I write or bill that I stop, every book that I write, article I write, podcast, video, is really truly for me about helping people find truth, find happiness, find joy, find connection, strengthen their families. Because you know what? In these times that we live in, the family truly is the most powerful and greatest unit of society. And if people can hold strong in their families, then it doesn't matter what happens around us. We will not lose truth. We will not lose purpose. We will maintain our identities, and the world will increase in love and human kindness. That's all rooted in the family. So you want to know who I really am? That's my heart. I am giving my whole life to this. And so is my family, because your families are that important to us. Sorry to get emotional on you there with my story, but I am truly profoundly grateful for what has happened to my life. I feel it's an honor to do the things that I do. So I would like to give you something. It is a free class. This free class is called The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success. Click on the link that should appear hopefully next to me in the box for that class. If not, look it up on my channel. The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success. That class will help you better understand how self-government can change your life, and also how you can improve your relationships and just every moment of your life from getting stuck in those traps that increase your feeling of emotional bondage. Click on that link now. I'll see you there.